Violence, misogyny, hip-hop, there's a long, complicated history there. But the question that this Action Bronson petition raises is that about to change? Joining me to talk about this are Rodrigo Bascunan, best-selling author, producer, and encyclopedia of hip-hop knowledge, and Anupa Mistry, arts and culture writer who's worked with publications like The Guardian, The Globe and Mail, Rolling Stone, Pitchfork, and Vice. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Anupa, I'm going to start with you. Action Bronson, do his lyrics amount to hate speech?
No, I'm gonna come out and say I think that was probably one of the big issues that people took with the petition. That, I mean, first of all, I found it very troubling that lyrics were kind of held up as an example of why a person shouldn't perform, because that opened this petition, which is pointing to a very important, like, it's an important thing that we should discuss. And I did agree with the idea of banning him from the square, or I guess asking him to move to a private venue. But I think when you start to cite lyrics and then say that this is hate speech when it's
lyrics.
It's lyrics,
yeah.
You know, that's a very slippery slope. And I think that's kind of what poked a few holes into the argument and what made this issue much bigger.
Rodrigo, I'll go to you. There's 40,000 signatures,
Right.
saying this is hateful speech. What do you think?
I mean, first off, I was looking at the actual people that signed the petition, and a lot of them aren't even from Toronto. The majority are, but you have people from all over the place. So, I mean, that in itself is another aspect of the petition that's slightly flawed, that, you know, if we're talking about the public taking ownership over their space, you know, I think that's valid. You know, if the public feels a certain way, you know, they're paying taxes, this is their city, they should have a voice in what happens here. So that's valid. But if you have outside voices also in that group, that sort of does weaken it a little bit. In general, though, I sort of stand with Anupa on it. I feel the wording of hate crime, you know, being that is actually, you know, a phrase from, you know, the criminal code. So we're talking about legal things here, which I'm not really qualified to speak on. But yeah, I mean, if that's hate crime, I mean, there's going to be a lot of other rap that'll fall under that category. And I don't know if that's something that feels like a Pandora's box there that maybe we don't want to open.
Certainly a slippery slope, as Anupa said, when you start analyzing lyrics versus conduct in real life and those sorts of things. Rodrigo, though, the video that circulated with the petition, particularly objectionable. In the video, Action Bronson rolls up a woman in a carpet, stabs her, dumps her body in the lake. You're our hip-hop encyclopedia here. Is that common for his music?
Well, see, I don't want to defend that video. You know, I watched that video. I've seen it before, and I was just like, oh, God, why'd you have to go there?
But is that common for his music?
Well, I mean, let's remember that Kanye did a video called Flashing Lights where he has a woman murdering a man in a very similar fashion in the back of a trunk with a shovel instead this time. So, yeah, that type of imagery is not completely out of place in hip-hop. I think you know, just to put some context into what Action Bronson is, you know, who he is, hip-hop, people that become MCs are generally big characters, you know. And Action Bronson, I think in particular, is basically a caricature. You know, I think his intentions are shown right from his name. You know, Action Bronson is a combination sort of action hero name, right? I think that's the type of image he's trying to create.
So,
right?
his artistic persona is this kind of comic book superhero
or
character.
supervillain, depending on what side you're on. Yeah,
yeah. And so you think his lyrics should be viewed through that,
right?
lens.
I mean, his lyrics are they're absurdist at times. There's a large sort of fantastical element to them. You know, they're sort of Dadaist, you know, abstract. He kind of goes from one subject to the other really quickly. I mean, he has songs. In that song you played, Acting Crazy, in that video he plays basketball with a dinosaur. I mean, this guy is like, you know, kind of out there, right? This is his thing. I bet he regrets making that song. He probably regrets it. But he's also the type of artist that, you know, in terms of his creativity, he's constantly pushing, right, into more absurd imagery. Yes. And I think, you know, in that particular case, his creative process led him to a space that, you know, people don't really agree with, right? But in general, if you look at his body of work, it's really, it's pretty abstract and it's pretty weird, you know, so.
Anupa, I want to ask you, why do you think Action Bronson in particular has set off this controversy?
I don't know, actually, why Action Bronson in particular has set off this controversy. I mean, in conversations with people, you know, we do wonder if it's because he's a white rapper. And some people say that maybe that does make him an easier target because when you talk about Black American rappers, they're, you know, people don't want to necessarily get into that. I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Bronson. I don't know if I personally believe that. I mean, I think that he has a track record of doing kind of deplorable things outside of, like, or off the mic, you know?
In particular, 2013 concert, which you attended here in Toronto. So what happened there?
So this concert was at the Danforth Music Hall, and it was a double bill with Danny Brown, who is a rapper from Detroit. Also similarly, like, cartoonish and an outlandish guy. And I think it was Action. I think Action went on first. And I also want to preface this by saying that I was an Action Bronson fan. I think that was probably like my fourth time seeing him. Like, a girl came up on stage to join Bronson and was kind of dancing around or whatever. And then, you know, he just basically groped her seemingly without her consent and, like, pretty aggressively. Regardless, he groped her. And the crowd kind of erupted into cheers. And, like, my reaction was very, like, I've been going to hip hop shows for over a decade. And that was, like, an instance of me for one of the very first times feeling, like, pretty uncomfortable and unsafe in an environment that I'd always, for the most part, felt safe in. And so for me, framing the petition through his art didn't make sense because he's done stuff like that in this city that could be grounds for removing him from a public free performance. He's also, like, you know, done super transphobic stuff that he's, like, posted on the internet, homophobic stuff, like racist stuff. And I don't know if he's ever, like, you said that, you know, you think he regrets making the Consensual Rape song?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if he does. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy
really
expresses remorse, you know? And so I'm kind of here for checking him a little.
So maybe all of those things have kind of culminated in people wanting to check Action Bronson and bring a petition against him. You brought up safety, which I think is a very important issue in this whole conversation too. First of all, though, Rodrigo, you were at that concert as well in 2013. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sound like a jerk here. I was there, yeah, and I remember it happened. I mean, first, can we just put out the public service message of, if you're not invited onto a stage, don't go on the stage. You know, it's dangerous with rap shows.
That's
a
good PSA.
Yeah. Like, let's not do that. You know, if you're a guy, you're getting bodied. Yeah. So anyway, I saw that, and I had no reaction. Because, you know, I've been going to hip hop shows since the late 80s. And I've seen stuff like that a lot of times. And I'm not saying that makes it okay. What I'm saying is that at that point, it didn't seem out of the ordinary for a rap show to me. And I didn't really even think about it. I remember seeing it and sort of being like, oh, okay, that happened. And then the next day reading the article now, where the writer Julia LeConte, she talked about it and she was upset about it. And I started to think about it a little bit more deeply at that point. And I realized that, okay, you know, this is actually healthy for the culture, you know, because in general, you know, rap concerts in the past especially were very, very male-centric. You know, I mean, 90% of the crowd would be men. And the music is aggressive, and it has an aggressive stance towards women a lot of the time. And that in the shows, that would be reflected. You know, rappers would call up women on stage, and then there would be all sort of sexual innuendo being performed, or even worse. like wet t-shirt contests, groping, all that type of stuff has happened. So it wasn't shocking to me at that time.
I think that's the most interesting thing, the biggest thing that's come out of this petition, and pointing back to that article, is it feels like maybe something is changing in terms of the audience and in terms of the voice. Give you really quick last thoughts, Anupa, on that issue.
I'm happy that it's being questioned, and I think it's going to push us to examine hip hop and music culture and pop culture in more important ways. I do want to add that the one thing that I agreed with the general position of the petition, but I didn't actually sign it. And part of the reason that I didn't sign it was because of the way it positioned Bronson and his work and music. But also, like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with who this solidarity represents, you know? Not all feminists. Maybe.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And this will be an ongoing conversation for sure. Rodrigo Bascunan is author and documentarian, and Anupa Mistry is an arts and culture writer. They join me live today in Studio Q.